For this video, we're going to talk about select by location inside of ArcGIS Pro. Now, you may be familiar with select by attributes, which we've talked about in previous videos. Select by location uses a similar SQL style logic, but takes advantage of the spatial nature of the data that we have. So we have this wonderful data that we can map and, see in space and use with other spatial data. It follows logically that we should be able to select our data based on where it is, not just based on the wonderful information stored inside of our attribute tables. So let's see how select by location works. I've got a lot of stuff going on this screen right now. How about I just cut it down to 2 layers so we can see what's going on. I've got some towns here in roughly central Massachusetts. Let's not start any arguments about what central Massachusetts is. And I've got the Blackstone River watershed here. So the towns in that kind of orangish color, the watershed in the tan. If I wanted to select only towns that were within that watershed, I couldn't do that with attributes. I don't have an attribute for my towns of in watershed anywhere. Let's see, town, nope, shape, object, towns, town. None of that's going to work. And the watershed itself is just an area. It doesn't have a list of all the towns that are in it anywhere. So I have to use the location attributes that I have here. Select by location. Fortunately, that's easy to find in the map tab in the selection group. Hanging out right next to our select by attributes friend is select by location. This tool, pretty easy to use. I like reading this tool like a kind of like a weird sentence or a weird paragraph. It makes it a lot easier because it's doing a lot of shorthand in terms of how these pieces are operating together. Remember that for any of these tools, you can always hover over that I to learn more about what this section of the tool is doing. It tells you more about those selections there. If you click that, it'll even pop out a fuller help window. In this case, we have to think about what we want to select features in. So my first selection here, what are my input features? What do I want to select? I want to select towns. At the end of this, I want my selection to show up in towns. So do I want to select towns? What kind of relationship do I want to select them with? There are a lot of options, tons and tons of options. I like intersect because it's the most general. It kind of gives us touches and crosses and through and within all kind of at the same time. You can be more specific about these if you'd like. Sometimes you might need to. I'm going to stick with a basic. So I want towns that are intersecting my selecting features. So I want towns that are intersecting my watershed. Towns intersecting my watershed. I could set a search distance, kind of like a buffer here. I don't want to do that. I just want towns in the watershed. And of course, I'm making a new selection because I don't have anything selected. From there, you have 2 options. You can hit apply. Apply just runs this and leaves the window up. Okay, runs it and closes the window. Not much of a difference. I'm going to hit apply. Would you look at that? So now I can see my selection has appeared. It has selected towns. I can tell by the little lines here. It has selected all of the towns that are intersecting the watershed. So at least part of these towns, all of these towns that have been selected are within the watershed. I could go to my town's attribute table to double check, and I could see that 25 of my towns are selected here. And everything is looking pretty good. So that is my select by location. Select by location, then giving me the ability to do a selection using the location attributes that are within my spatial data rather than my attribute table. Have fun.